In this video, I'm going to be talking about Armageddon and the Battle of Armageddon. I'm really going to get into it. I'm going to bring in lots of different concepts. I'm going to bring in the history. I'm going to bring in the science. I'm even going to talk a little bit about astronomy behind the Battle of Armageddon. I'm going to bring in quantum physics and the metaphysics a little bit, okay? Towards the end of the video, it's going to get kind of involved. I'm going to be talking about the gateway process, and I'm going to be talking about out-of-body experiences a little bit and how that proves that there's an afterlife. But we're really going to look into the concept between the battle between two hills, battle between two kingdoms. I already touched on this subject in a couple of videos, but I'm really going to get into it now. The Battle of Armageddon, I know people associate with the end of the world, but I know the Battle of Armageddon has always been happening, okay? And sure, there might be a final battle, but the Battle of Armageddon in the Book of Revelation has always been happening, okay? What does the Battle of Armageddon mean? The Battle of Armageddon means the battle between good and evil, okay? But if you go into the etymology and the symbolism, it means the battle between two kingdoms, or even the battle between two stones, or two hills. Okay, so in the Bible, when Satan and Jesus first met, they met on top of a mountain, okay? And they opposed each other, obviously, right? And they're looking out over a valley, and he said, look at all these kingdoms, right? Okay, really keep in mind that these two guys were on top of a mountain, okay? But now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of the Bible. So in the beginning of the Bible, Noah's Ark landed on Mount Ararat. And notice that Mount Ararat has two peaks. There are two stones here. And right after that, there was the Tower of Babel. It's my opinion that the Tower of Babel and Noah's Ark were in the same area, okay? And I can't prove that. That's just my own little theory. In my head, I feel like, the people who rejected God went onto the other side of the mountain, and that's where they built the Tower of Babel. Now, I can't prove that because everything's frozen up there. It's solid ice up there. That's why no one can prove that Noah's Ark was up there, or if the Tower of Babel was around there, because it's frozen solid. Okay, now we're going to keep going with these two hills. This is Mount Shechem. It's in the Bible. So sometimes it's a battle between these two hills, or a balance between them, I feel like. Okay, so this is Shechem. Okay, this is where God, he had a group of people to go on one side of the mountain and preach curses, and then he had another group of people and preachers go on the other side of the mountain and teach blessings. So there's blessings and cursings being taught, and that is a balance right there. These things are balanced out, okay? You have to understand God's blessings and cursings, right? But later in the Bible, what happens? So this is when Jesus was talking to the Good Samaritan, all right? The Samaritan woman. And this was at Mount Shechem, okay? They were literally talking about these two hills. You can even see that in these depictions of the woman in the well and Jesus. Okay, you can see those two peaks in the back. Very good. This is a good picture. Okay, and she told him that in her false religion, her God only said to preach on one of these hills. And you might wonder which one it is. It doesn't matter, because if you just choose one of these things, it's not good. You have to preach. This is what unsaved people do, or a false religion do, or what Satan wants you to believe, okay? He wants you to either just see the blessings or just see the curses, all right? And there's a balance between that. I talked about this in this video. Usually, people only see the blessings, God's blessings. They don't take the cursings and the warnings seriously. And that's how Satan usually gets you, okay? So you see how this is a concept. These two hills is a concept. All right, so now we're going to talk about Mount Carmel, and this is very important. So you really have to go into the history of the Canaanites, and then with Israel, okay? But Mount Carmel was owned by the Canaanites for a very, very, very long time. And they would do their sacrifices on top of the mountain, okay? They would go on top of Mount Carmel, and they would pour water on the human and animal sacrifices, okay? That was part of their ritual. They would anoint the sacrifices and sacrifice them, okay? Listen to me, this is where infant baptism comes from. You pouring water on your child and then for God, it comes from the Canaanites. It does not come from the God of the Bible. I know baptism as an adult is in the Bible, but baptism for a child is not in the Bible for several good reasons, okay? And God warns you about this. I will explain it real briefly. This is in Psalm 107. He pours contempt upon princes and causes them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. Okay, why is this talking about... This is baptism talk, right? And this is in the Old Testament. That is because the Canaanites were pouring water on their firstborn child and sacrificing them, okay? And God is saying this is actually going to be a curse. How in the world is infant baptism a curse? Infant baptism, in my opinion, is so evil and it's twisted, okay? Why? Because you think you're first of all, your child has to consciously accept Christ, okay, to be protected and saved. Babies are not conscious of anything. They do not know what's going on. You performing some ritual and thinking in your head that they're protected is not right. It's not true. It's a lie, okay? And another thing which is really evil, people who believe in infant baptism, like the Catholic Church and the East Orthodox, and there are several pagan religions that teach infant baptism. It goes from the beginning of time. Okay, the Native Americans have had infant baptism. Okay, they teach if your child doesn't get baptized, if they die, they're gonna go to hell. That is not true. Okay, the Bible does not teach infant death going to hell. Your child is gonna go to heaven if they died as an infant. Okay, because they did not reach the age of discernment. They did not reach the age of consciousness. Okay, so God doesn't judge them for that, and they go into heaven. Okay, but it's so twisted the other way around. They teach if your child isn't baptized, if it dies, it's going to hell, and that's evil and stupid. Okay, and then you're thinking that your infant is in hell, which is just so evil. It's wrong. Your infant is not in hell. It's an evil concept. I do not like infant baptism. If God wanted you to do infant baptism, he would have mentioned it even one time in the Bible. But right here, he's warning you that it's actually a curse. Okay, anyway. Infant baptism comes from Baal worship. Okay, because they would anoint the child sacrifices with water, and then they would sacrifice them. Okay? Anyway, and that is obviously depicted in the Bible. When Elijah and the temple and the prophets of Baal, they went on top of the mountain. If you read it, they go on top of Mount Carmel, because that God was trying to claim his part of the mountain, okay? And that is what happened, okay? They were fighting on top of the mountain. And of course, they didn't literally get into a battle, but they got into a sacrifice versus sacrifice thing, right? And they had two. You have to go back and you have to really read what they did. They had two piles of stones. These are two stones they would put the sacrifices on, okay? And yes, they poured the water on them. And I know people think they just poured water on them because God was trying to show how powerful he is. He was more powerful than the water. But that was part of their ritual. The Canaanites would always pour water and anoint the sacrifice, okay? So God met them on their own turf, okay? And they did the sacrifice off and God won. Now listen to me. It was after that the Israel owned half of the mountain. Okay? They owned half. If you go into the history, the Canaanites still owned half of this mountain. Okay, that is two stones. In this picture, you can literally see the two stones, okay? It's the battle between two stones again. Okay, now we're going to talk about the literal Mount Armageddon or Tel Megiddo. This is the literal Mount Armageddon, okay? And this is very important. I'm going to really get into some stuff here. Basically, there are layers and layers and layers of archaeology here. Many people owned around this area. The Israelites did, the Canaanites did, the Egyptians did, the Greeks and the Romans did, and and there are supposedly more battles fought on this mountain or around this mountain than any other place in the world, in the ancient world. It was huge battles all the time. Why? It was because the people who owned Mount Megiddo had control of the trade routes, okay? They had control of the routes. They had control of the roads. That's why there was lots of war for this mountain and for this area. It's the Jezreel Valley too. Whoever controlled this mountain and this valley had control of the flow of the ancient world. Okay, now listen to what I just said and combine these two ideas, okay? In the book of Revelation, there's pouring of 7 bowls. And then it talks about Armageddon, this Mount Megiddo. Why? There's so much symbolism in this. If you want to learn about the book of Revelation, you're going to have to study the rest of the Bible, okay? Don't just read the book of Revelation. I always warn people about that. If you want to know about the past and the future, you have to study history and the rest of the Bible, okay? So in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, you pour bowls on top of a mountain. Why? Because on a Mount Megiddo, this information will just go everywhere. Just like in real life, these roads went all over the earth, okay? You have to pour the information out so it goes everywhere. Anyway, okay, so now I'm really going to get into this. So Mount Megiddo is mentioned in the Old Testament in the book of Kings. Supposedly these are supposed to be Solomon's stables, okay? These are horse stables from Solomon. And there is lots and lots of controversy about Mount Megiddo because there's idols of Baal up there, there's writings from every ancient culture up there, and there's a huge argument if these current stables were owned by Solomon or some other kingdom. And quite frankly, I don't know, okay? I don't know who owned these stables. I don't even know if it was one kingdom at a time or if these guys were all sharing the mountain and fighting over it. Okay, trust me because there's all kinds of high places, weird burial mounds, and people will argue if this is from the Israelites or if these are from the Canaanites or what. Okay, and it's a huge, huge argument. I'm just giving you that information that it's mentioned in the in the Old Testament, but people are saying these are not Solomon's stables; they're the Roman stables or something. Okay. But something I will definitely point out is this mountain is slowly being cut in two currently because of all the archaeological digs, because of in the 1900s this mountain started being cut in two because of all this archaeology being done. Coincidence? No. Okay? It is literally the battle between two hills. You can literally see it happening in real time. Of course, it's not a coincidence. Okay? The Mount Armageddon is slowly being cut in two. Crazy, right? Okay, now this is going to be even crazier. Alright? So, you have to really go into history and the story of Israel and Judah. Okay? Okay, so in the Bible, right before the Israelites got into captivity with the Babylonians, Israel and Egypt got into a fight, a big battle, by or on Mount Megiddo, okay? They got into a big fight, and Josiah was martyred. He was killed. He was the last king of Israel, or Judah, before they got put into captivity. This was the final battle that they lost, supposedly lost. Okay, they lost. Okay, so listen to me. So why, if it was Egypt, if they're fighting Egypt, why in these depictions are they showing Roman and Greek soldiers killing Josiah? Why? It's because Egypt was hiring Greek and Roman soldiers because they were around by this time. They haven't conquered the earth yet, but they were around. They were hiring mercenaries to kill off people. So the Egyptians hired Greek and Roman soldiers to kill Josiah on top of a mountain, and they probably poured water on him because the Greeks and the Romans were all doing Canaanite worship as well. That's why in this picture, this is such a good picture. I'm so glad I found this picture. In this picture, it shows Greek and Roman soldiers killing Josiah, and they're pouring water on him because that was part of their religion, because these guys were all doing the same worship. Okay? And of course, that is prophetic of Jesus. Okay, the sacrifice being killed by Greek and Roman soldiers is obviously a reference to Christ. It's history repeating itself. Okay, now let's keep going with this battle between two kingdoms. Probably now the most important one and current one is Jerusalem. again, you have to really go into the anatomy of Jerusalem. Jerusalem used to be one big rock, and then it was cut in two. Okay? And are people still fighting over the Holy Land? Are there still kingdoms fighting over the same rock symbolically and literally? Yes. Okay? The Battle of Armageddon has always been going on. Okay? Again, Jerusalem was one big rock, and you could say it in on one side, right, currently is the Muslim mosque, and on the other side is the Mount Zion, Mount Calvary crucifixion site. Okay, it's one kingdom versus the other. It's doing Jesus and Satan sharing the same rock and fighting over the same rock. And obviously this is current information. This is people fighting and killing each other over the Holy Land will never stop. Okay, and it's not just talking about Jerusalem. It's talking about America. Are Democrats and Republicans, are they two kingdoms fighting over the same land? Yes. God uses all of that, okay? Why is God, not just me, bringing up these two rocks all over the world? It's because the Battle of Armageddon is happening all the time, everywhere, obviously. Good and evil, the battle between good and evil is everywhere, okay? And now I'm going to really go into astronomy a little bit. A long time ago, okay, bring this up real fast. I brought this up in this video, this Native American video. So, a long time ago, there were two main star constellations. There was a dragon snake star constellation, and then there was the Southern Cross. These two, they were polar opposites, and it's so funny. This is why, that's actually where that phrase comes from. So the guy on the cross opposes the serpent. That was a theme in the ancient world. If you go look in all these ancient cultures, okay, I'm gonna go back to the beginning of time again. The very first written word, one of the very first written words in cuneiform was a cross on top of a mountain, and it was a symbol for a bird. Coincidence? No, okay? And again, I'm gonna explain this real fast. So, in Egypt, it was always a bird or a bird man who opposes the god of the underworld. The god of the underworld was always green or serpentine, or a lion that was part serpentine, or a goat. In the Egyptian culture, it was Horus, who was a bird man, or a bird, who opposes the god of the underworld, who was Osiris. In the Babylonian Assyrian religion, it was Marduk, who was a winged man. He's a winged man who opposes a dragon. Okay, and even in the Persian story, it was Ahura Mazda, who was a winged man who opposes Satan, the god of the underworld. In the German story, it's a man hanging from a tree who then saves the world. And you can see this cross-winged man theme all throughout the ancient world. Why is this a theme? Why is a bird man, even in the Native Americans, they have the bird man who opposes the Satan? Why? It's because it's a star constellation. It's the Southern Cross versus the snake. Okay? God did all of that on purpose to try to save you. He literally tries to tell you who the hero is in all these religions. The guy on top of the mountain with the cross is the good guy. The snake is the bad guy. Okay? But you have to actually come to Christ, though. You're thinking it's literally Horus or some other guy's Antichrist stuff. I already gone over that in this video. But these two hills is a theme even in an ancient astronomy. Okay? It's the battle between two stars. Two star constellations. Okay, so now I'm really going to have to ask you to hold on to your hats here and really bear with me and try to think about this. I'm going to go into a little bit of quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And basically, quantum physics that is going to prove that there are two hills that resemble the afterlife. Okay, that's what I'm going to be doing here. Okay, so we're going to talk about a very scary experiment that was done in the 1950s called the Gateway Process. Okay, the Gateway Process was a government-funded institute okay? And this is very scary. They were experimenting with out-of-body experiences, okay? Actually, this guy, Robert Monroe, he actually coined the phrase out-of-body experiences. They were doing scientific experiments proving that out-of-body experiences were real, and they did prove it. Okay, out-of-body experiences can happen in several ways, in my opinion, okay? They can happen with near-death experiences. People can leave their body in near-death experiences, and that's touching on pineal gland awakening and deep meditation done through yoga. And okay, that's actually what they're trying to achieve with the third eye awakening. They're trying to achieve this state, okay? Drugs can induce it, okay? And hermeneutics and sometimes also yoga. Out-of-body experiences can happen in the D wave when you're sleeping, okay? You can have an out-of-body experience when you're sleeping. That's what dreaming might be, a little bit, okay? And sleep paralysis definitely is an out-of-body experience, kind of, I believe. Also, but how they were doing it is they were predominantly doing it by hermeneutics, sound frequency. And I talked about that a little bit in this video right here. Sound frequency can move things, and it can move your soul out of your body, alright? They repeated this experiment several times. They didn't just do it once, they did it several times. Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because according to the scientific method, how do you make scientific theory into fact? If you can repeat a experiment several times and get the same result, it's supposed to be a fact. It's not supposed to be a theory anymore. And they repeated this experiment several times, so out-of-body experiences are a fact. It's not a myth, it's a fact. According to the scientific method of repeated experiments, out-of-body experiences are a fact, not a myth. You are not supposed to be doing any of this stuff. I'm not promoting you to try to do deep meditation, pineal gland awakening, or do drugs to do out-of-body experiments. They were doing hermeneutics, okay? They were experimenting with sound waves and sound frequency to make your soul leave your body. This is a real, I know this sounds like fringy stuff, this sounds like conspiracy theory stuff. This is a real experiment. You can go look up the gateway process, you can go download the documents, okay? This is a real CIA funded experiment, okay? And there were real scientists who were working on this. There's it was called the Monroe Institute. This guy was a sound engineer, but he worked with others. He was working with biometric engineers and quantum physicists, okay? There was many scientists involved, okay? But the institute was called the Monroe Institute. It doesn't exist anymore, but anyway, I'm really going to get into these two hills here, okay? They did experiments where they were doing out-of-body experiences, okay? And they warned people in this CIA document. They warned people to never try to do this themselves. It was a big problem that they were encountering non-friendly entities from another dimension. Those are obviously, as Christians, we know that those are demons, okay? They said they were doing out-of-body experimentation, and they were coming in contact with very hostile entities, okay? But something that they proved with this experiment is that they proved that when you die, your consciousness leaves your body. And not only does it leave your body, it goes into two states of infinity. Okay? 2 afterlives. And it's forever. Okay? Guess which 2 states, 2 infinities, this is proving. It's proving heaven and hell. Okay, now these are actual lines from the actual document, okay, their actual report from their studies. It is true that when for an infinitesimal brief instant that energy reaches one of its 2 points of rest, it clicks out of time-space and joins infinity. That critical step out of time occurs when the speed of the oscillation drops below the Planck distance. I will explain all this in a second. To use the words of Bentov, which he's a biometric engineer, quantum mechanics tells us that when the distance goes below Planck distance, we enter, in effect, a new world. So look at this diagram. So the Planck distance is the middle. That's your regular consciousness on Earth. Okay, but there are two infinities that reach outside of the boundaries. There's one on top and there's one at the bottom. There are two hills of points of rest that reach into infinity. And when you die, you will reach one of these points. Okay, the one on the top or the one at the bottom. And this is the ultimate battle of Armageddon, which is the battle between two hills, two kingdoms, two forever states of rest. Okay, and notice there's not 3 or a million. Okay, there's no reincarnation, there's no purgatory, and you can never come back. The Bible says the gulf is fixed. You can't go back. Right now, you're bouncing in between both. You're in between, okay, because right now you're in between dying and living, but when you flatline, and this is exactly what happens on an EKG machine, okay, an EKG machine, it's actually sensing this, okay, because right now we're in a constant state of life and death, okay, and this earth is under the influence of both kingdoms right now. It's in between these two Planck distances, okay. But when you die, I know you think when you flatline, it's just erasing. It's not erasing. These scientists are trying to say when you flatline on your EKG machine, you're actually reaching one of these infinitesimal points. Okay? You're resting on top of one of these points. Do you get what I'm saying? And all of this is in the Bible. I just showed you the more obvious geographical ones, but God explains all this in the Bible. First of all, this motion of these points going up and down, in mathematical terms, they're called locusts. Okay? So when God is talking about locusts in the Bible, he's not just talking about the insect locust. He's talking about the mathematical points moving up and down, and that is very obvious in this Bible passage. Okay, I'm going to show you what the locusts look like. In mathematical terms, they're points in motion going in between two hills. It's talking about clocks, and it's talking about this up and down oscillation during your lifetime. This is in Psalm 109. I am gone like the shadow when it declineth. I am tossed up and down as the locust. Is this talking about this up and down motion of your life? And is it talking about two states of rest that the locusts are bouncing in between? Yes, of course this is what the Bible is talking about. And not to mention these states of rest, God uses play on images. Do these not look like grave markers? And that's where your state of rest is. And is it forever? Yes. Okay, these are two states of rest in the absolute in quantum physics that you will be spending your infinity at. You have to choose. Okay, you have to choose which Armageddon hill you are gonna belong to. Okay, and these scientists are so funny though, because they say that they prove that there's an afterlife, and they're like, there is an afterlife. Everyone assumes that they're going to heaven. Okay, everyone assumes that they're going to heaven. And it's going to sort itself out later. It's not going to sort itself out later. You have to accept Christ now, okay? And you have to choose your point of rest before you die, all right? A really good indication if you're going to hell or not is if you don't know what's going to happen when you die, you're going to hell, okay? And I'm trying to get real with you to save your soul. If you don't know what's going to happen when you die, if you don't know which hill you belong to, you're automatically going to choose Satan's hill, okay? You're going to choose Satan's absolute state of rest, okay, by default. You don't just say, I have no idea, I don't choose. That just means you choose hell, all right? And again, this is so crazy. This is actually in the report, just like they said they basically encountered demons, okay? It's actually in the actual CIA report. And let's read this. The concept of visible reality, the created world, as being an emanation of an omniscient and omniscient divinity who is completely unknowable in his primary state of being, The absolute at rest in infinity is a concept straight out of Hebrew mystical philosophy. Even the Christian concept of the Trinity shines through the description of the absolute as presented in this paper. So I think that's hilarious that they actually had to put that in their document, scientific document, okay? But still, they're like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen, but, just leave it up to chance. Don't worry. We'll never know who this God is or who's controlling this. It's the God of the Bible, okay? It's the God of the Bible, and you have to come to Christ. It's not like a big... I don't know why people have to go through all these riddles. God gives you the answer over and over again. People just don't want to believe it. They don't want to accept Christ. They want to hold on to their sin. I'm actually going to read the first line again. The concept of visible reality as being an emanation of an omniscient being. Okay, so what is this talking about? I will give you my viewpoint. Okay, so everything in reality is a demonstration of God's power. Okay, and it depends on your perspective. You can either say everything is against Jesus or for Jesus. I think God literally used everything available to human consciousness. God created, just like it says, everything created is an image of a beast, of an omniscient being. But there are two images. Okay. God used the stars, he used history, he used etymology, he used archaeology, he used everything available to prove to you what's happening. He used science, okay? And he used everything available to try to bring you to Christ. He did everything available to human consciousness and all human understanding to bring you to Christ. But if you have a crooked image, okay, it's just everything against Christ. It's for or against Christ. That's what this battle is really about. Alright, so this video is a very good demonstration, I think, of the battle between two hills and two states of rest. And two images of an omniscient being. Okay? Alright, so please think about this stuff, guys, and thank you.